This lecture is on a contemporary philosopher named Samuel Scheffler, who teaches at New York University, in his book Death and the Afterlife. Scheffler says, suppose 30 days after your death, Earth is destroyed by a giant asteroid. You wouldn't be indifferent even though you yourself wouldn't be annihilated by the asteroid. You would respond with dismay over the thought of our loved ones being destroyed and the things we care about, like institutions, practices, activities, and ways of life. Scheffler says we want the things we care about to flourish. He says there seems to be a connection between wanting something and wanting it to be preserved. During our lifetime, this translates into a similarly close connection between valuing something and seeing reasons to preserve it. Part of the sadness of contemplating our own deaths, under ordinary circumstances, is we won't be able to preserve the things that matter to us. We can, of course, take steps while we are alive to try to bring it about that other people will act after our deaths to preserve these things. Wills and bequests are important to us largely because they offer us an opportunity to extend our reach beyond our death in an effort to help sustain the people and things that matter to us. But the doomsday scenario dashes all hopes of these things we value being preserved after our death. The emotional consequences of this are likely to be profound. Scheffler asks, how would the destruction impact the way we live? To what extent will we remain committed to our current projects and plans? To what extent would the activities in which we now engage continue to seem worth pursuing? Scheffler says it seems many activities and projects would not be worth pursuing. Our reasons to engage in them might not seem as strong. Our emotional investment in them might weaken. We would not feel as excited about them. Our belief they were worthwhile activities in which to engage might weaken or perhaps disappear altogether. He says projects especially vulnerable to change in attitude would be projects where the success lies in the faraway future, where the value of the project derives from the benefits it will provide to a large number of people over a long period of time. Some examples that Scheffler gives of projects and activities that are especially vulnerable to a change in attitude in the doomsday scenario would be scientific findings, like finding a cure for cancer, social and political activism, the building of new buildings, and protection of the environment. Examples Scheffler gives of projects and activities that would plausibly be vulnerable are artistic projects, literary projects, academic research in the humanities field, and bringing children into the world. Scheffler says the attraction of these activities is not undercut by our own death. We cheerfully engage in cancer research, recognizing the payoff of these activities will not be achieved before our own death. However, the importance of the activity is diminished by everyone else dying. Scheffler believes activities least likely affected by the doomsday scenario would be activities focused on personal comfort and pleasure. But it is not obvious what would be comforting and pleasant under doomsday conditions. Scheffler says we desire a personalized relationship to the future. The fact that people we knew who live on after our death will value and remember us is something we treasure. It makes it feel as if we still have a place in the world of the future, even after our death. There are those who protest that these attitudes are silly and irrational. Death is final, and being remembered doesn't change that. People will eventually no longer remember you. But the point is that we do care, and us caring about being remembered testifies to the fact that we want to still be personally present in the world somehow after we die. This is also one of the many reasons why people attach such importance to parent-child relationships and that the loss of a child is so devastating. Scheffler believes we want the things we value to live on. We take steps to ensure others will sustain what we value after we die. Traditions preserve what is valued across multiple generations, and many people value their membership in national groups or organizations because of how much they so much embody what they value. It often becomes important to them that these groups survive after their death because for some people, the survival of the group or community has the level of importance of the survival of their loved ones. Even if they will not personally be remembered through their contributions to the organization, they see a strong sense of their identity living on after their death. These groups contain an even greater longevity than the memories of one's family and friends. Moving on from the doomsday scenario thought experiment, Scheffler next discusses an infertility scenario thought experiment. Suppose humans on the whole planet have become infertile. Human beings have become infertile with no recorded birth having occurred in 25 years. The human race faces gradual extinction as the last born generation gradually dies out. Scheffler says the imminent disappearance of human life would be sufficient for us to react with horror even if it would not involve the premature death of our loved ones. Many groups and traditions would die out sooner rather than otherwise. Scheffler sees such a world as characterized by despair, erosion of social institutions and social solidarity, deterioration of the physical environment, loss of belief in the value or purpose of many of our activities. He says the depressive effect would plausibly impact our enjoyment of activities like appreciating nature, the appreciation of literature, music, the visual arts, achievement of knowledge, food, drink, and sex. Friendship will be affected because it usually involves the sharing of valued activities. With these activities losing their meaning, so do the friendships that are based on them. Every person alive in our world will be dead in the not too distant future. This fact is universally accepted and not seen as an impending catastrophe. There is no crisis of world leaders to consider what to do about it, no outbreaks of mass hysteria. The recognition of our own mortality doesn't prevent us from seeing our everyday activities as worthy of pursuit. Yet, the infertility scenario displays mass crisis and despair in the face of the non-existence of future generations. Thus, the coming into existence of future people we do not know and love matters more to us than our own survival and the survival of our loved ones. In a sense, our own survival is less important to us than the survival of the human race. The infertility scenario demonstrates the limits of our personal egoism. Scheffler says we value our activities because they are part of an ongoing historical project. We want to engage in activities that have or will have a significant lasting impact on those in the future. We see ourselves in solidarity with those in the past and the future who have engaged in the same activities. Thus, our valuing has an implicit social dimension to it. Remove this, and the sense of importance to our activities begins to erode. The historian loses interest in his research on Bulgarian history. The philosopher loses interest in writing articles on John Rawls. Scheffler points out that what it is we value, we also want to be preserved over time. Thus, what's important to us now depends on what we think will happen to what we value later. Our human valuing is dependent on our confidence that humanity has a future.